Hello everyone, welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video sponsored by Focus Entertainment, developers of the game Hard Space Shipbreaker, more on that later on. But this is a very special video, guys, because in a way, this video is 5 years in the making. All the way back in the frankly ancient time of 2018, I made a mini-series called Minmus Base Hotel and Casino. I'd kind of got a bit inspired by the recently released Arctic Monkeys album Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. And in this series, I kind of built up the infrastructure for, as you might expect from the name, a hotel and casino on the surface of Minmus. And when I say built up all the infrastructure for a hotel on the surface of Minmus, I mean we built this, what you can see on screen. This is a supersonic transport plane that will take any guests from their country of origin to the Lowne Aerospace spaceport, in which they will disembark the plane, get on board the SSTO that will then take them from Kerbin to the surface of Minmus, where the hotel is located. They will then disembark the SSTO via a special surface transport bus that doesn't require the tourists going on EVA, because of course in the Kerbal Space Program, tourists can't go on EVA, and then the bus takes them to the hotel. But although I actually put all the pieces in place, I never actually went. I've never actually put it all together and made a video showing all the pieces working together as I designed them to work together. And I thought, it just popped into my head. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got a series 4 years old and I forgot to finish it. Not the first time, and probably not the last time that I've forgotten to end a series, or just abandoned one. But I actually really want to do this mission because I don't know. I just suddenly was like, oh, this would be a really cool mission to do. So that's what I'm doing. We've got Matt Kerman flying this plane here. I'm doing a few crossfades to sort of simulate the journey that this plane would take. I mean, you've probably figured this out. But I started at the desert airfield and we'll be flying all the way to the Kerbal Space Center. I'm just going to speed the footage up now so you can kind of see that I did in fact make the flight legitimately. I intermittently shut down some of the engines on the plane just to conserve a bit of fuel, and we're only maintaining a coasting speed at this point. Oh, here is the landmass, that's the word I was looking for. The landmass that, of course, the Kerbal Space Center sits on. It's just going to come into view in a second. So, yeah, I'm super stoked about this. I hope you guys really enjoy this mission. And, ooh, what a shot that was. I'm not that great at using camera tools. I basically know how to do one shot, and it's this. Look at that. A Doppler shot, I think it's called. Anyway, we'll skip forward ahead in time to landing on the runway. Of course, just because I like being dramatic, the SSTO is actually all ready to go on the runway, so we kind of need to make sure we don't crash into it. That would be very bad. And yeah, so I think I can't remember how many Kerbals I've got now for the tourists. I did say, for the record, that I designed all the infrastructure of this whole system to work with tourist Kerbals, so they don't need to go on EVA at all. But for the purposes of this mission, I'm just using regular Kerbals, not tourists, because I think it's quite fun to, get Kerbals on EVA, plant flag, service samples, all that good stuff. But in theory, it could work with the tourist Kerbals. Now, Matt Kerman is very excited. He didn't want to wait for the tourist bus to, dock with the Boxwing airliner. He wanted to just run straight to the SSTO and get on board. I have sped the footage up very fast. In real life, I'm not this fast at running, or I guess speed waddling would be a better description of Kerbal movements, wouldn't it? Yeah, I've sped up the footage 12 times, I think. And it's still taking let's just cut ahead a bit. There we are. That's better. As you can see, the SSTO is quite happy to see me. I think it's bouncing up and down like a little dog. I managed to stabilize it by adjusting the spring and damper strength of those landing legs there, and then Matt Kerman can just get on board. You can get on board by going underneath the SSTO and jumping and grabbing onto a hatch. We can kind of head to there. Oh, so I've got some ore tanks in the back of this SSTO. This is meant to simulate kind of all the crew supplies, water, food that sort of thing that we'd need to bring with us, along with the hotel guests themselves, who during that whole run to the ship have managed to get on board the tourist transport bus. We can just drive them down to the SSTO where they can get on board. And again, we'll be using a docking port. You can see that one on the front of the bus there. That's going to allow them to transfer into the aircraft without the need for going on EVA. Again, just to confirm that this mission would work with actual tourist Kerbals, and also because, you know, they paid good money. They paid good money to go to the hotel on Minmus. They ain't walking on outside. They're staying inside. That's... I didn't mention it earlier, but you may have caught the ore tanks inside this transport bus. That's got the, the simulated mass that would represent any kind of food, crew supplies, that sort of thing. We can transfer that ore into the SSTO and take it with us to Minmus. So let's get these things docked together. Now, I actually measured the height of that front docking port on the bus to the docking port on the spaceplane, so they align perfectly. So here we go. Never mind. I mean, like I say, the game was 4 years. It was a 4-year-old. These crafts are 4 years old. So maybe the spring settings have changed in Kerbal Space Program since then. So that's not good. So basically, what's happened, guys, is the engines have fallen off the space plane. But it's fine. We can just press on. We can just glue them back on and then launch. It'll be fine. Just ignore the fact that the engines just fell off. And now the legs are bouncing. It's going well so far, this mission, I think. I'd give it a good solid 4 stars out of 5 thus far. This is just a real nightmare. I'm just going to crossfade to a point in time where the crew is on board the space plane. The engines have been glued back on, and we can reveal the Lowne Aerospace graphic. I mean, obviously, I watch a lot of real life launches because of my space news series, and all of these companies have some sort of UI in the live stream telling you kind of what's happening in the flight and when stuff's going to happen. For example, max Q, things like that. And I thought, why not do that for this SSTO ascent? Because, I got a bit of a history of just going off on tangents and rambling about stuff and not really, talking about the video. And it might be kind of helpful for you to know what's happening in the flight whilst I'm telling some random story about my fridge or something like that. So I don't know, what do you think of that? I'll probably won't do it for every video, but I think this looks quite nice. Oh, hopefully there were no nestling chicks in those trees. We're getting quite close to the water. It is quite heavy, this beast, but don't worry, we won't actually hit the water. I thought I'd get a cool Doppler camera effect of me nosing up, but the camera tool started glitching and it wouldn't work. So now I've got this shot, but we're much higher. So yeah, sorry about that, guys. Anyway, for this stage in the SSTO ascent, I'm just going to maintain relatively level flight whilst I wait for my surface velocity to reach about 440 meters per second. If I were in a climb right now, we'd probably struggle to reach this speed, hence why we're flying relatively flat. Oh, we're getting close to that Mach 1 point. If you're wondering what the max thrust point is, just above Mach 1, that's the point in the flight at which we reach 440 meters per second, which is about the speed required for the Rapier engines to start outputting loads and loads of thrust. Hence why I've got max thrust there. You'll see our surface velocity very rapidly starts to climb once I pass that 440 meter per second mark. And how's that for some perfect commentary timing that happens once in a blue moon on this channel? We've now passed that max thrust point. As you can see, we are now rapidly accelerating, so no need to maintain level flight. We can start pitching up. I'm not going to pitch up too aggressively, because if we did that, we'd end up going too high, too fast, and we'd run out of air for the Rapiers to breathe, basically. So we want to be trying to hit about 1,400 meters per second to 1,500 meters per second, while still in the air-breathing mode of those Rapier engines. Once I reach about 10 kilometers in altitude, I'll actually start flattening out my angle of attack even more, just because between 10 and 20 kilometers is kind of a sweet spot for SSTO ascents, because the atmosphere is very thin, so there's less drag, but there is still lots of oxygen present, so that the Rapier engines can continue burning on air-breathing mode, rather than the much less efficient closed cycle mode. At the moment, the Rapier engines are burning basically like a jet engine would, so it's taking fuel and using oxygen from the air as the oxidizer agent. Eventually we'll be too high up to use oxygen from the air because, the air will eventually disappear, at which point we'll have to use liquid oxidizer stored on board the fuel tanks. Although we are still accelerating, we are rapidly climbing into the very thin parts of the atmosphere, so the thrust of those Rapier engines is going to start declining at some point. So it's about this sort of time that I start up the nuclear engines, usually between the 20 to 23 kilometer altitude, just to kind of supplement the thrust of those Rapier engines as we continue our climb onto space. In just a second, we are going to pretty much run out of air for those engines to breathe. So we're going to flip them over to closed cycle mode. And you're going to see the fuel gauge at the top of the screen. We're now burning liquid fuel and oxidizer, which is why, our fuel gauges are suddenly going down much faster, because this is a less efficient mode for those Rapier engines, but it's the only mode we can use. And those nuclear engines, they ain't got the thrust to get this thing to space on their own. And you can see as well, we've got those Werner engines at the front of the craft just to help us pitch up for this final part of the ascent. We now just want to get our altitude nice and high to give the nuclear engines as much space as possible. Is that a pun? Maybe. In order to circularize, because it's going to take a long time to circularize on those nuclear engines, because despite there being 4 of them, they got very low thrust to weight ratio. And this is a big, heavy, clunky, cumbersome space plane as well. If you download the craft file for it from the video description, you might find it handles a bit slower and a bit more sluggishly than it perhaps looks in this video. That's just because the video has been sped up like much faster than the real-time footage. This thing doesn't really do anything fast. Now, I kind of messed up. I obviously shut down my Rapier engines too early, and I ran out of time to circularize. I was going to end up re-entering the atmosphere before I got my periapsis to, above the 70-kilometer line. So I thought, let's try and, quickly fire the Rapier engines again to complete our circularization nice and fast. But I messed up completely, and we ended up with a periapsis of 66 kilometers, which is not the end of the world, but it was a bit annoying because it takes ages for the craft to pass through that part of the atmosphere and get back into space where normal time warp becomes available to us. So we're just going to have to sit around and wait for the craft to re-exit the atmosphere. Bit of a drag, but the crew won't be bored because look! They've got a games console with a copy of Hard Space Shipbreaker, the amazing game by Focus Entertainment, who have sponsored today's video. Hard Space Shipbreaker released on PC earlier this year, and it's just released on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. Now, I don't often accept video game sponsorships because the games usually suck, but this one is like an actual game that's actually really good. Look, it's got 89% positive reviews on Steam, and I think you guys would like it. You follow this channel about space news and space video games, and that's what Hard Space Shipbreaker is. In the game, you play as a blue-collar starship salvager, and it's your job to cut up and destroy defunct spaceships. It's one of those games that sort of transcends genres, and it's actually surprisingly addictive and fun, and pretty therapeutic as well. You'll get to salvage a variety of spaceships, slowly building up and upgrading your arsenal of tools to take on bigger and more difficult ships, some of which can be a real challenge to break down. Be careful dealing with hazards like fuel lines, electrical systems, reactors, and of course, avoid explosive decompression. The game sports some impressive physics simulation, and it's all backed up by really engaging story mode as well. I'm super happy to be sponsored by this game. If it sounds like something you'd be interested in, then click the link in the video description, and if you choose to buy it, use my affiliate code MATTLOWNE to get the game in the Focus Entertainment store. Buying with this code tells Focus who sent you there, and it directly supports this channel, so what's not to love about that? Anyway, I timed that quite well because it seems we are now leaving the atmosphere again, ready to perform our burn to get our periapsis above the 70-kilometer mark, which has, of course, just happened. So now we can have another attempt at getting ourselves into a stable orbit. Very small burn this time, so we should be able to do it. Although I forgot to set an action group to toggle all the control surfaces on and off. Not really essential, but it looks a bit weird having the elevons and all that moving around whilst the ship is rotating in the vacuum of space. So I quickly set up an action group to toggle them all on and off for our in-space activities. And yes, then we can begin that so important burn to get ourselves circularized. Yeah, it was dead easy. There was nothing at stake there. It wasn't going to go wrong. Now we can set up our burn to Minmus, or should I say our burns to Minmus. Yes, I've already stated this craft has terrible thrust to weight ratio, and doing just one burn to Minmus it would take too long. Basically, we wouldn't spend very much time burning at our periapsis, which of course, according to the Oberth effect, because of the Oberth effect, burning as close to periapsis as possible is the most efficient place to burn, at least for a maneuver such as this one. So in order to maximize our efficiency, we're going to split our burn to Minmus into two. The first burn, which of course I'm still conducting right now, is going to do the bulk of our transfer, and then we'll just swing around the planet and do a second, slightly shorter burn to raise our orbit all the way to the height of Minmus's orbit. From the map screen, it doesn't really look like we've got that far, but raising our apoapsis is more of like an exponential thing, so it takes very little delta V to raise our orbit from 2,000 kilometers-ish to Minmus's height, compared with the initial phase of the first burn, where it takes quite a lot of delta V just to raise the apoapsis up a little bit, just because it's very close to the massive mass that is Kerbin. Anyway, yeah, there goes our second burn. You might be wondering, actually, and this is a terrible point in the video to address this because we're 15 minutes in at this point, but you might be wondering why my nuclear engines look so beautiful, and that is because I'm using the mod Waterfall, among a few other mods as well, but I mean, the Waterfall mod is what's making my engine plumes look so nice. Other mods, I've got, obviously, Parallax, probably should have mentioned that. I've showcased the Parallax 2 mod in my previous 2 KSP videos, so I'm guessing you guys probably know what that is by now, but it adds all that beautiful ground scatter you saw back on Kerbin, all those trees, things like that, and rocks on other planets and moons too. I also have Planet Shine and Scatterer and Astronomer's Visual Pack paired with Environmental Visual Enhancements. I've done a video on how to make a version of Kerbal Space Program look as good as mine, sans the Parallax mod, because that's literally only just come out. But yeah, you can click, I'll try and remember to put a link in the description to that if you're interested in trying to, make your Kerbal Space Program look like this. If you're on console, I am sorry. There's not much I can really advise. But you will have my eternal respect because I have tried playing console KSP. Again, maybe you can check, you could just, I'm not going to fill the description with like every single video I mentioned, but you could just like Google it. You just type in Matt Lowne console, it's there. I've tried console KSP and I didn't take to it naturally. Let's put it that way. There's a reason I don't make console videos anymore. Not like I made a lot anyway. I think I made like 3 or 4 in total. But yeah, here we are in low Minmus orbit, by the way, and there is the hotel on the surface. It's got a capsule as its icon. I never obviously changed it to be a surface-based symbol, but it doesn't matter. One kind of weird glitch to quickly mention when you see me fire the nuclear engines. Well, you can't see, but I am firing them. Something was glitching with the waterfall plume. It wasn't creating that purple flame coming out the back of the nuclear engines. I restarted the game to see if that fixes it, and it didn't fix it. And then later on, when I leave Minmus's sphere of influence, the engines fix themselves. So I guess there's some weird interaction between Minmus and Waterfall. Maybe it's Parallax. I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of a bit... Obviously, because now my engines are burning, but you can't see. So you're going to have to use the audio cues that I'm very helpfully talking over, so you can probably barely hear those. But it doesn't matter. Just know that if the ship starts to, decelerate, it's probably because I'm using the engines. And there is the Minmus Base Hotel and Casino just over there. I got pretty close. We're about 1 kilometer away, but it's not a big deal because we can use the surface bus to transfer the Kerbals on board this plane to the hotel. I'm using those front Werner engines there just to slow down our touchdown nice and gentle. I mean, it was kind of a rough landing overall, all things considered, but that last little bit was nice and gentle. I'm now going to lower the landing legs to bring the front docking port down to the same height as the docking port on the front of the crew surface transport bus. I'm going to deploy the solar panels on the SSTO as well, so it doesn't run out of electric charge during our little stay on the surface of Minmus. Now, I always assumed the Minmus flats were like salt, they're like a lake bed basically, like a salt plain, but I think it turns out they're actually made of ice. Maybe it is mint ice cream, because look how skiddy and slidey the bus is. Deja vu, am I right? It's like, yeah, drifting all over the place. It was a bit of a nightmare to control. The footage is being played back very fast, so it probably looks a bit more extreme than it was in person, but it was still, it was pretty unwieldy, this bus trying to control it. And then we can line it up to that front docking port on the space plane and mosey on over to it, see when we get it to dock. Oh, it's going to be the moment of truth, guys. Will it dock? Let's have a look. Hopefully we'll have more success than we did back on Kerbin. It's still not quite right, is it? Which is a shame, because I very specifically did engineer these two craft to, work on the surface of Minmus with Minmus's gravity docked together. It wasn't the end of the world. I could just remove the landing legs of the SSTO completely, kicked up the nose a little bit using those front Werner engines, and we got some contact with the docking ports. Now we can just transfer all of our tourist Kerbals over into the bus, and they can go on their merry way to Minmus Base Hotel and Casino. Oh yes, but before we do that, we do need to transfer all of the, like I say, the crew supplies, the luggage, that can be transferred like a liquid, I guess. Water, food, everything else that you would need in a, lunar or minor, I don't know, whatever. And a hotel and casino on the surface of another celestial body. So we can just transfer all of that ore. And of course, a bonus of transferring all of this ore is it means that the actual SSTO now has slightly more Delta V. It's not like, for a funny little jump just there, it's not like we wouldn't have had enough Delta V to get home, but it's reassuring to know that we definitely won't run out of fuel now. And then we can just slide the bus back to the hotel. Now, one thing, if you've been around since the days of, when I first built Minmus Base Hotel and Casino back in the ancient times of 2018, oh, their games console's gone, that's a shame. But yes, you might have noticed that there's a bit of a thing missing from it. The original hotel had the big Minmus Base Hotel and Casino flag on those, you can't really see it yet, but on the crown of the building, those four, their tail fin pieces, there was the big Minmus Base Hotel and Casino flag there, but it's just a white band now. You can see it now. I think obviously the flag file is glitched out or it's not loaded properly. I'm not sure. So sorry about that. Hey, if anything, that's a reason to go back and watch the original, have a little nostalgia trip. I'll put a link to a playlist of this entire series. Like, this is the final episode of a series, albeit a series that had a 4-year long hiatus. So you can kind of watch, the building of all these crafts. You can watch the building time lapses, all the individual tests, things like that. And there's a few other little things in the commentaries. You might have noticed the SSTO and the airliner were Boxwing design. I go into kind of the merits of designing aircraft with Boxwings, things like that. We're now going to use the flexi hose of the hotel to dock itself to the rover, and there we are. We can transfer the Kerbals to their rooms. Well, I'm just going to transfer them into the pods that I think have the best views, right? So the cupola modules. I'll put one of them in one of those, Mark III passenger bays as well. And we'll stick one on a balcony too, just so we've got a nice little range, because this is a video, ultimately. You guys want to see what the views can be, and that's it. That's the views. I think it's time to do a signature Matt Lowne cinematic zoom down, taking in the sights. Minmus looks particularly nice in this video because I've got the parallax mod installed. It does make surfaces look a little bit nicer, as well as adding ground scatter. Yeah, there we are. I hope you guys enjoy your stay at Minmus Base Hotel and Casino. Now, I know I said that this hotel was kind of inspired by Arctic Monkey's Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, but really, it probably shares more in common with the Eagles' Hotel California, because like that hotel, you can never leave. Because Matt Kerbin didn't come with them. He's just going to fly away because I got stuff to do. I don't want to hang around for a few months at this hotel whilst these tourists have a fun time. They can just stay there. It's probably going to be another 4 years, I guess, before I revisit them. I was aware I had to nose it quite quickly here because I was conscious of this hill just in front of the SSTO. But as you can see, I think you'll agree, loads of room, loads of clearance. It was very, very safe. You could put a base hotel and casino in that gap, so it was fine. And then we can just circularize into low Minmus orbit and get ready to go back to Kerbin. And of course, upon leaving Minmus' sphere of influence, we do get a return of the waterfall engine plume, so that you can kind of see the tail end of the exhaust just there. So there's obviously like some invisible thing covering it. I'm not a programmer, I don't really know how these things work, because obviously something is doing something to prevent waterfall from properly displaying, but should be able to see it now once I've done my Minmus escape burn. All burns thereafter should be back to normal. I say this with a little bit of an asterisk because we do have another waterfall glitch coming up in store, so just remember to stay tuned, get that viewer retention up. Yes, more glitches, more suffering is yet to come. Anyone that's played with the waterfall mod is probably aware of this glitch. I don't know what causes it or how to fix it. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me there's like a really simple fix, like just edit this one line in Notepad and it will work. I don't know. Basically, all the audio in the game just stops working randomly, selectively. So things like atmospheric drag, like the sound of air passing on a craft, is still there, but engines don't make any sound, landing gear deployment makes no sound, and there's just a few other things. It's really, really random and sporadic which sounds are affected. So yeah, the game will become a bit quieter in just a second. But not right now. As you can see, the engines are still making noise. Well, they're not now because I've finished burning. Well, now I finished burning. And yeah, I went for a periapsis of about 45 kilometers because that's low enough where it reduces a lot of drag to reduce our apoapsis down at a reasonable pace, but also not too low where we'll succumb to the effects of atmospheric re-entry heating. And there we are. All of our control surfaces are once again activated to help steer us during our descent. Yeah. I do love this craft. I should get back into building Boxwing, shouldn't I? I went through a bit of a phase in 2018 of building loads of Boxwing aircraft and then just sort of stopped and never did it ever again. But they do look pretty cool. They look pretty nifty in my opinion. This isn't a perfect SSTO by any stretch. There's certainly a lot of things I would change now. I would definitely use RTGs instead of solar panels because it's just far less faff. And I'd probably put a beefier reaction wheel inside it as well, just to make it all a bit more responsive. Now I had to do 4 subsequent aero brakes to bring my apoapsis down to a good height, and I figured like you guys don't want to see that because it's just boring to watch the same thing over and over again. So we're just going to cut across to the final pass, and I didn't do any burns or anything. All I did was aero brakes, and I didn't do any active controls, and it just happened that the final pass put us on a course right over the Kerbal Space Center-ish. So I tried to just do a very hard brake to get to the runway without needing to do a circularization in low Kerbin orbit and, speed the mission up and all that. However, I was a bit overzealous with my banking and ended up inducing a massive stall for the aircraft, and this craft doesn't really recover from stalls too easily. I made some attempts by trying to point the SAS along the prograde vector and firing the engines to get some speed up, which is what you can ultimately do to get yourself out of a stall, but it didn't really work, so I just had to sit and wait for the aircraft to get to the thicker parts of the atmosphere where it would more easily recover from a dive like that, and there we are. Now we can get back to level flight and head towards the Kerbal Space Center. And yeah, that's pretty much, I guess, this mission's wrapping up. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I needed to discuss specifically about this mission or the craft files that have been featured? I guess other than if you want to see the full series, there would have been a card on screen earlier, I hope. But there'll be a link in the description as well to the full Minmus Base Hotel and Casino playlist. There's the runway looming into view, as well as the transfer bus and the Boxwing Supersonic aircraft transport thing. I never really named that thing properly. So if anyone has a suggestion for a 4.5-year-old craft, then I'm all ears. Let me know. I think the craft's name is Tranquility C, like the letter C. I can't remember why I called it that. Probably meant something, and obviously it's an homage to Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. Yeah, I mean, this SSTO is called the Tranquility SSTO, so I think I was kind of going with Tranquility as a working title for this series. But yeah, I never gave a formal name to the aircraft or the bus. I've been calling it kind of the surface transfer bus, which is a bit of a rubbish name, really. But yeah, I'm welcome any names for any of these craft, because I'm all ears. And I'll tell you what, whilst we're on the subject of names, guys, let me tell you about some amazing names. These names right here, they're the names of my channel members and my Patreon supporters who help support what I do here and make all of this content possible. If you want to join their magnificent ranks, you can do so by clicking the link in the description after you've clicked the link to Hardspace Shipbreaker, of course, and sign up to either Patreon or channel membership scheme, whichever one floats your goat. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, remember to leave a like down below, but otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. Goodbye, everyone.